creatures behind the door. The doors are locked. The windows are closed tightly. Not a single ray of light can enter the room. Small pieces of garbage pile up on the floor. The food on the table is covered with green mold. I sat quietly, pretending as if I didn't exist here. I knew they were listening, waiting for me to reveal my presence. My stomach growled with hunger, but I couldn't go outside to find food. Fear paralyzed me at the thought. I knew they were waiting for me. Those rustlings, those voices beyond the door. First one, then another, and now several gathered at once. Someone peered through the keyhole. Another pressed their ear against the door, hissing something to the others. They had already found me. So far, they couldn't get in, but it was just a matter of time. I knew among them there would be someone who could break the door. They needed a reason. It was some kind of game. Let's creak the floorboard. Make the slightest rustle. When there's silence behind the door, I still move soundlessly, quieter than the hour hand on the wall, not making a single sound. Evening fell, and the dark apartment became even more eerie. They gathered again near the door, breaking the night silence with wheezing, hissing, and coughing. Those creatures were always loud. Their bodies emitted disgusting sounds. Individually, they were weak, but dangerous when they gathered in a group. That's why I was so scared. And the doorknob jerked. I forgot the rules of silence and rushed loudly across the floor, hiding behind the couch. But it was a ruse. They whispered behind the door, deciding to bring someone who would break it. They dispersed. Water dripping from the tap in the kitchen, the fridge humming, and the clocks ticking. I continued to hide behind the couch. They made me feel insignificant. I had never felt like a victim before. These vile creatures made me cautious, twitching at the sight of my own shadow. I brought their wrath upon myself. Why were there so many of them? But I had no intention of leaving. This was my home. If I ran away, they would win. But I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. My thin, long arms became even thinner. I had to do something before I weakened from hunger. The whole night passed in thinking. It was impossible to sleep when you know they are hunting you. In the morning, tormented by helplessness, I tried to sleep, but it didn't work. My hearing was always good, but now it became particularly acute. I heard thumping from the walls. Those were their hearts beating. Dozens of hearts pounded incessantly, not synchronized with each other, sounding like an amateur orchestra. The noise disturbed me, making me feel trapped, and I wanted to escape these sounds. They teased me and drove me into a frenzy. Somehow, I fell asleep in the corner on the carpet. The sound subsided. One more day without food. I was getting weaker. In the evening, I was awakened by voices behind the wall. It was the father and the son. The father was hurling angry threats and humiliated the son. The son tried to justify himself with a pitiful voice, which only angered the father even more.
I told you to shut up!
The father screamed in anger.
I'm sorry,
The frightened child said, wiping away tears. I felt like I knew what they looked like, even though I had never seen them. My imagination painted clear images based on their voices. The father had a beer belly, wearing a dirty, worn-out shirt, and had a week's worth of stubble. The son was thin, frightened, just as dirty and unkempt.
Say anything else and I'll kick you out the door.
The drunken father revealed in humiliating his son. These creatures are still surprised by the curse that hangs over their house. They don't deserve anything else but death. Again, turmoil at the door. They were back. They brought someone who would break the door. I understood it from the loud sounds those creatures were making.
Police, open up! We will break the door!
A sharp blow to the wood, and the door was broken. I panicked and rushed around the apartment. What should I do? I could handle any of them one. But there were too many of them, and I had almost no strength left. I couldn't show myself to them. My existence was a secret. I was supposed to be a nightmare. No one should see me. I opened the window and crawled outside. At the moment they broke in, clinging to the wall, I could hear their voices, spitting and coughing. Humans are sensitive creatures. The smell of a corpse is an intolerable stench to them. They can't stand their own odor. I hung outside the window on the wall, listening. I had nothing to fear. These creatures can only walk on the floor. It would never occur to them to look for me here. Their leader shouted,
Go to the ground! Put your hands behind your back!
Then thought I would wait for them in the room. Oh, they wouldn't like to see the smelly corpse of apartment's owner. Well, they began lamenting as if they felt sorry for him, but they only remembered him after 10 nights, after I ripped out his heart. Hypocrites. While they were yelling and coughing, I crawled upward on the attic, where I would be safe for a while, until they discovered another corpse. Then they would surround off the whole house in search of me. It didn't matter. I would hide from place to place and kill them one by one. On the attic was warm, and the air was saturated with the smell of birds, but it didn't bother me much. Hunger tormented me. I struck terror in the hearts of the residents of this house. They pounded with redoubled force, driving blood through their bodies. People quickly spread rumors about new victim, found in a locked apartment. The signature of the murder was the same, a torn chest, a ripped-out heart. My work. Now they were scared, and they had a reason. Someone among them would lose their heart tonight before I went insane from hunger. Those two voices, the father and the son, they seemed like suitable victims. They lived in their own little world, and no one cared what was happening behind their walls. Their absence wouldn't be noticed. Immediately, flickering cars dispersed, and their leader wandered around the yard for a while, not understanding the misfortune that had befallen him. And then he too drove away. New victims awaited me. Instincts urged me to do it immediately, but I had to be cautious. I waited for the residents' heartbeats to slow down as they fell asleep. At the right moment, I crawled through the attic window and descended like a spider to the window of the targeted apartment. Saliva dripped from my mouth. I anticipated the moment when I would sink my teeth into tight muscles of the heart and taste the blood. My thirst was insatiable. Outside the window, it was quiet. The father was asleep, and the son tiptoed around the apartment. Hanging outside the window, I gazed at my reflection. My lifeless face appeared gaunt, cheeks sunken, but it wasn't as bad as I thought. People considered my appearance repulsive. It made them shudder in horror, but that's how it should be. I was pale and cold, resembling a human who had died. My eyelids were always moist and my lips turned downward, earning me the name Weeper. But it's me who makes them weep. Like a branch touched by the wind, my hand tapped on the glass. The child immediately noticed and silently approached the window. He looked just as I imagined, dirty and skinny, his body covered in his father's bruises, his eyes filled with fear. But I knew he would open the window for me. They all did. My gaze mesmerized them, and they always let me in, even if they knew why I came. To the boy, I was not as terrifying as his tyrant of a father. I climbed into the room. The child looked at on the ceiling, waiting, trying to figure out what would happen to him next. His small heart was a tempting snack, but not the main course. There was something meatier in the other room, a lump of muscles that sounded deafeningly loud. I crawled into the brightly lit room from the TV, approached the victim eagerly, descended from the ceiling and stood between the dirty man and the screen. My shadow enveloped him. He snored and drooled. All I had to do was reach out and break his ribs, pulling out his heart. Humans are so fragile. The drunken man opened his eyes when my hand clenched his heart. He looked at me with wide open eyes as I extracted his heart from his chest. He wanted to scream, but blood gushed from his throat, and a scream choked. In the final moments of his existence, the dirty man saw his heart in my hand. His terror-filled gaze extinguished forever. I eagerly tasted the red lump of muscles, gnawing and tearing it with my teeth. A feeling of satiety spreading through my body. After so many hungry nights, my acute hearing dulled. I only heard the sound of my chewing. That was a witness to my bloody feast. The dead man's son stood behind the open door, watching me. In his gaze, I sensed relief. The source of his eternal fear was dead. My appetite was satisfied. I was no longer hungry. I decided not to harm the boy. For the first time since my existence began, I didn't want to destroy a human being. It seemed that this little human and I had something in common. We were both lonely and felt relief. I left the room, and the skinny boy stepped aside, now knowing that I posed no threat to him. He watched as the terrifying Weeper crawled into the night through the window. I didn't want to return to the attic. It was too warm there. This time I chose a similarly dark but cold basement, climbed through a small window, and peacefully fell asleep on the damp floor. In the morning, fragments of voices from the previous night's apartment reached me through my sleep. The child called for help, and an elderly woman, the little witness's relative, came to the house. She tried to console the boy, but he didn't seem sorrowful, As they carried his father's body out of the apartment, his heart pounded with joy. Interesting from a human moral standpoint. Did I do a good deed? My actions have never benefited people before. Maybe I could live in a way that doesn't interfere with them if I'm selective in choosing my victims. I can rid people of those who are disgusting to them, and the survivors will keep silent about their savior. I need to think about choosing a new victim before I starve completely.